Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today is our second Ask Me Anything session. And this is a session that we call Look to the Stars, because what we aim to bring you is a star connected to the Polaris community, a person who has an inspiring career, who has great accomplishment, or maybe an interesting life story, somebody who can brighten up our evenings, and who can shine a little bit of light or a little bit of interesting story to our evenings. And today we are having our guest Mirjam Kühne, who is the chair of RIPE community, a very interesting lady with a lot to tell us about the online community, about the internet, and about what it means to be a woman in tech. Good evening, Mirjam.
Good evening. Thanks, Juana.
Nice having you here. Thank you for joining. Soon we will hear more about you and your story. But first I wanted to give a few administrative information of how our session works. So we have a few questions prepared for Mirjam, and we're going to discuss those. But feel free to ask questions as well during the session. We are streaming this session via Zoom, so you can join via Zoom. You will be on mute on Zoom, and please also keep your cameras off. But if you want to ask a question, you can always raise your hand, and we will give you the microphone. And we are also streaming this live on Facebook. And for the people on Facebook, you can always also ask a question in the chat, and we'll read out your questions then. So, Mirjam, thank you for joining this evening. Hope all is well with you. We are living some interesting times, and everybody is at home. This is also why we are doing this online. Tell us, how are you coping with this pandemic, and do you have any specific routines that help you throughout these weird days?
Yeah, thanks, Juana. Thanks for having me here at this session. This is interesting. Well, yeah, I'm kind of used to working from home. So I've been working from home before, but yeah, this is of course, very different. And I miss my colleagues, and I haven't been to the office since March. Now with my new role, I probably wouldn't be there anyway. But yeah, I've tried to have a good kind of workspace here at home. But the one thing I started quite early on is I kind of cycle to work. One of my colleagues said at the time, cycle to work, because otherwise you just get out of bed and then get behind your screen, and then you don't get out of the house all day. So I actually make a point of every morning before I do anything, I get out and go cycling for half an hour, depends. And I've discovered a lot of interesting parts of the city, that I already live in for over 20 years, but I still discover new things. And then I come back, have breakfast, and then I'll start working. So that really is one of my early morning routines, and it really helps me get through the day. And I also have a very supportive partner that actually has breakfast ready when I come home, and also is very supportive in any way, throughout my career already, so that helps a lot. So I'm happy I'm not on my own, and I have a few routines that get me through the day.
Yeah, it sounds good to get the body moving in the morning, because otherwise indeed we are just behind the computer the whole day and not exercise too much. But yeah, talking about the computer, right, I think your work is very much connected to online and to the internet. You are the chair of RIPE, but a lot of people don't really know the importance of RIPE community, of RIPE NCC, and how things actually behind the scenes are working, behind the scenes of the internet, because there's a whole organization, right? There's a whole governance behind the internet that allows it to actually work as it does, and allows us to be online. And we don't know that much about it. Can you tell us a little bit about it more? Like how does the internet work, and what's the role of RIPE and RIPE community and other organizations that are similar?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, you're right. When we usually when we use the internet, we're using an application or web browser, and the internet is kind of layered, and the application layer is like the top layer, if you will. So usually we only see that little bit of it, almost the tip of the iceberg, if you will. And underneath there's a whole layered kind of structure of the internet, of the infrastructure. Basically, there's a whole infrastructure underneath. And one part of it is are the addresses. So if let's say the internet is actually a network of networks, right? So if you're a service provider or a telco or another network operator, a university, you usually have control over your own network only. So you know what's happening in your network, and you have control over your network, but you don't have control over your neighbor's network or your competitor's network, So in order to make all these networks connect to each other, people kind of have to talk to each other and have to coordinate and have to collaborate and coordinate on certain technical aspects. And for instance, one of these technical aspects are the underlying addresses. So it's a bit like the postal system. If you send a letter to a friend, you'll have to know the address of that friend and the house number and the street address. And the delivery service, they also have to know, and they have to make sure the post letters is unique so that the delivery service knows where to bring the letter to. So you as a sender has to know the address, and the recipient has to have an address, and they have to be unique. And it's the same on the internet, basically. So every computer, every device on the internet has to have a unique address. It's called the Internet Protocol, the IP address. We also have domain names. That's something that we usually see as human users more often. The IP addresses we hardly ever see. It's really something underneath that the computers, the networks between themselves, that's how they communicate with each other. Yeah. But so the network operators, they have to coordinate this, and just make sure that that they know, which addresses are used, and so that I can connect to my competitor's network. I need to know what addresses they have and how I can connect to that. And that's something that this whole coordination work started quite early on in like 1989. There were I think 14 or so people at the time who mostly from academic networks and NRENs and universities in Europe. And they thought this internet thing, that's going to be the future. So they started to meet and to play around with it and to test and to make sure they can connect to each other. And so bit by bit, we're starting to use this internet and to promote the internet and totally open and free and loosely connected. They would meet a few times a year, and they would have mailing lists and a small database where they would register these addresses and who has what and how can we reach each other. And and they call themselves RIPE. It stands for Réseau IP Européen, the European IP network. Some people there were French and some others were English and German and Dutch. So it was quite a mixed bunch of mostly Western European academics at the time, I think. And then a few years later, they thought, well, they were growing and they thought it would be handy to have a secretariat. So they started the Network Coordination Center, so the RIPE NCC. Basically, they thought, well, let's have some paid staff who can help us organize the meetings, run the mailing lists, maintain that database, for instance. And so that's how the RIPE NCC got started. And that's a membership association under Dutch law. It sits in Amsterdam at Central Station, actually in a beautiful office there that nobody has been at since March. And so the RIPE NCC is the secretariat for the RIPE community, and that's still how it works today. The RIPE community is still there. There are now thousands of people still meeting a few times a year and organizing themselves on lists and communicate with each other. And the RIPE NCC is there to help them. And at the same time, the RIPE NCC also became what's called a regional internet registry, and they're basically maintaining these IP addresses. They're one of 5 organizations in the world to ensure that these addresses are distributed in a fair way and that they're unique and that they're registered. And so, it's a bit like a cadastre, if you will, but for the internet. And so that collaboration between RIPE and RIPE NCC is a really good construct, I think, and it started quite early in the 80s and still works.
Yeah, well, it's impressive, right? Because it all started with let's say a goodwill of these people in academia who they had this prophetic view that, okay, yeah, the internet is actually going to be a big thing and is the future, and we need to make sure that this is in a way organized, that it is free for everybody, and that people can really easily communicate with each other. And now we have these 5 big organizations that are actually ensuring that we can still easily transfer communication from one computer to the other. And as far as I know, these people who are still part of the community are very purpose driven, right? Like they volunteer a lot of their time and a lot of attention to the topic of the internet governance. And I think it must be very inspiring to work with these kind of people who are so motivated. I suppose you're also one of them, right? Who is fully motivated by keeping the internet orderly, organized. Can you tell us a little bit more? What drives them? What drives these people to volunteer so much of their time?
Yeah, you're right. They're mostly quite passionate, passionate people, and usually very skilled and experienced, and very knowledgeable about their area, of expertise. And maybe it's because from the beginning, I think I was clear that internet is about collaboration and cooperation. And what I just said about this network of networks, they realize that they, even with their competitors, they have to work with each other, and they have to talk to each other, and they have to come to the best possible solution in order to keep the internet stable and running. And you're right, some of them spend a lot of time, and some also say they have no life, or they have like their work is their life, so they also do a lot of volunteer work, or a lot of community engagement still in their spare time. Even though I have to say also, of course, most of them are funded and supported by their employer. So it's also clear, obviously, that this is beneficial for their employer and for the networks, that they work at. So it's not only that they only spend their spare time on it, but it is part of their, for many of them, it's really part of their life and their convictions, and yet it's true. And also what is also interesting is they're mostly kind of participate as individuals, even though they are, supported by their employers, and they're valued for their skills and expertise and passion. And then also often they stay engaged and involved, even when they change jobs, or even when they retire, for instance, then they're still, like, for instance, now when I was nominated as a chair, there's my vice chair also, and he is a retired community member, and he was selected as the vice chair, and he happily took that role on a volunteer basis. So just to give back to the community, if you will.
Yeah. And from your beginning at RIPE, you have been building communities, right? That's a big part of what keeps RIPE and RIPE NCC, let's say, together, connected, and probably also connected with the other organizations that do similar things. Can you share a little bit about how that experience was for you? How did you build these communities, and how do you keep on building them for so long? What is it that makes people come together and work for such a purpose? And how can you, as a facilitator and a community builder, do that?
Yeah, that's difficult. I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, it's hard to talk, often about yourself. How did I do something? People always tell me, like, well, you can work with anybody. How do you get all these, like, I don't know, technical people to work together and work with you? And I used to, when I was still at another organization, I used to run like a technical magazine, and I would ask people to just write something and contribute to that, and mostly they did. People were always surprised. Why do they do this? You don't give them anything back, you don't pay them, and it's not really great fame, just to write this blog article or something. But yeah, I think it's just taking people seriously and respecting them for their skills and for their expertise, and throughout the years, I guess I learned to pretty much deal with people from all backgrounds and all walks of lives. And I have a technical background that helps, of course. I've studied computer science in Berlin. So that gives me kind of a good basic understanding of what people are talking about. But I've also been in communications a lot in over the last 20 years or so. So I think that helped me maybe to bridge also different types of people, different communities, try to explain technical, aspects of the internet in the language is also understandable by not so technical people. And also, I think throughout the years, I've made quite a big network. So I met a lot of people and I work with a lot of people. And so it's not only about me connecting to people or like reaching out to individuals, also connecting people to each other, right? So often I speak to somebody and they want to know something that I maybe don't know, but I know somebody else, who might know this. And so I bring them in contact. And I think that's also a way of building communities, just by connecting people that might, need each other or, benefit from knowing each other. And that's, I think, maybe if I go back to this pandemic, it's maybe a bit of a challenge at the moment because you don't have these personal contacts. And how do you introduce people to each other? Usually you do this like at a conference or a meeting. And as I said earlier, now these networks and operators need to collaborate. A lot of this collaboration is built on trust and personal contacts, and that people know each other, and that they know somebody that they can be introduced to, and that's really much harder at the moment. I think especially for newcomers and for people who want to enter this industry, and we need young people and we need the next generation to participate and to engage. And I think that's something I personally also I would really like to help with if possible, maybe through mentorships or organizing events for younger people or new people who want to participate in this community. I think that's also a big part of community building, obviously, not only in your own circle, but really expanding the community.
Yeah. Talking about this, I want to go into a few more topics, but now you just talked about younger people and maybe also, talking about women. Is it more difficult to engage them nowadays into this community, young people and women, or one versus the other group?
I don't know. I mean, people say that the number of women in the technical community has been reduced again over the last few years. And I did see this in the RIPE community also over years, that especially women seem to have disappeared at some point. I don't know, because of families or different careers, and we've always tried to encourage women to come as presenters, or we also organize women in tech sessions or mentorship programs. I don't know at the moment if it's more difficult. I think it's just generally difficult for new people and young people and to engage because you don't have that physical interaction with people.
Yeah. So you see a bit of a risk because of the current pandemic to really, reach out to them, or for them to feel that they have the courage to step up into this network and to really have a say. So this is maybe also a nice opportunity to tell them that actually they are more than welcome to do so.
Exactly, absolutely, yeah.
Well, we received a question, so I'll go into that, and also reminding everybody who is watching us that if they would like to ask any questions to Mirjam, they can do so in Zoom, raising their hand, or via Facebook Live. You can type it in the chat. So what is an achievement you are very proud of? That is the question that came in.
Wow. Okay, that's a personal question. Well, I guess I'm very proud of that I've been chosen as this RIPE chair. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, there was I don't know if you want to go into this now, but when the RIPE community started in '89, with these 14 people, there was a RIPE chair. There was one of these people, one of these 14 was chosen as the RIPE chair, and he basically was the RIPE chair for like 25 years. And he was great. Everybody liked him. He was really good community builder and facilitator, and really good understanding of all the subtleties of different people. And so then after, at the end of his career, he handed it over to someone else like 5 or 6 years ago. And there was no process. He just said, you'll do it. And then your first task, he said, will be to kind of replace yourself, to basically find the next chair and put a proper process in place. And so we've together as a community, we worked on this process for many years, 4 years maybe at least, and finally have and that's also something about community building, right? Sometimes, I wish things would be faster, but it just takes its time, and it's a large community. It's very diverse and different people, different backgrounds, and opinions and passions, and so it took some time, and then we had this process in place. It was a nominating committee and deadlines and everything kind of written down. And then in the end, the nominating committee unanimously chose me. I was really, yeah, maybe that's something to be proud of, I can say.
For sure, it is something. It's definitely impressive. Huh? You are the first woman to be nominated and chosen to be a RIPE chair, and also you're the first one that got chosen through this process, right? Which really involves the whole community selecting who they would like to be the chair of this organization.
Yeah. I have to say there were 2 women and 2 men were nominated, so that was good to see. It was quite. They were all great candidates, so it must have been hard for the no-com.
Yeah, definitely. And how large is this community? So how many people get involved, for example, in this kind of a process?
I don't know exactly how many people got involved. Let's go back. We had a RIPE meeting. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago, last week. There were over 1,000 people registered for the meeting. We had another one earlier in the year in May. There were even more people registered. And actually the good thing there was we saw a lot of newcomers participating. I don't know exactly yet. I haven't really looked into the numbers yet, how many of them came back this time. So that's what I said earlier. I hope, we can also engage with them, with the new people. I don't know how many people are on the mailing list, but there are like thousands of people involved. And especially in this RIPE chair selection process, I was quite an active discussion and engagement on the mailing lists. A lot of people felt passionate about this, to find the best person and to make sure we follow the process right and all that.
Yeah, that must be quite a process to organize. I mean, I can imagine some really clear criteria, a bit like voting, right? We're now all thinking about elections nowadays. But that must be quite a process to organize, to have that many people have a say, to actually elect one person who becomes the chair.
But I think it was also important, and the community felt very strongly about that this is not an election. And in many other parts of the community decision making, it's no voting, it's no election, it's really consensus building. And that's also why often it takes longer, because you have to build consensus and you have to make sure you hear all the concerns and objections and and opinions, and kind of slowly work your way to a point where everybody kind of can live with or can agree, so but it's not easy. It's not easy sometimes to find that conclusion.
And can you tell us a little bit more of what you do in the role of chair of RIPE?
It just started in September. So, but the first big challenge on my way was this RIPE meeting that came end of October, like 2 weeks ago. And as I said earlier, I'm really happy to have this vice chair on my side. So it's also the first time that there a vice chair. I think there was a vice chair early on in the RIPE times, but part of this process that also a vice chair was chosen through this nominating process. And so we did this together. I'm really happy to have this, and that we are working as a team. And it's not just the vice chair sitting there waiting that I'm not available and then he'll step in. No, we're actually really trying to do this as a team, and we are quite different, so which is great. I think we complement each other quite well. But so the RIPE meeting organization, of course, and then opening the meeting and kind of basically facilitating the meeting, being in charge of the whole meeting. And that's we have as part of the RIPE community, there are 12 different working groups. So each working group has 2 or 3 working group chairs. And we're also chairing that, so the RIPE Chair is also responsible for that group of people, and I'm trying to make sure we support them properly, because again, they're all volunteers, and I'm doing this on the side, and so that's part of my role, to support them, to facilitate the discussions there, to see if there are any difficult discussions maybe in some of the mailing lists that we could maybe help out with. And yeah, reaching out. I also see this as my role, right? Reaching out to other people and to parts of the community that maybe aren't so engaged yet.
Yeah, so it's a lot of serving leadership, right? It's a lot about facilitating. So your role as leader is actually about offering to others platforms to discuss, to engage them, to get involved in the discussion, to reach a conclusion. I think that is really interesting, right? Because it is very much connected to what leadership should be about in general in all organizations. Even if you do have an executive position, it's really about engaging others and allowing them to do their role. And
yeah,
that's what you have been doing, right? By building communities, and you continue doing now from the role of chair.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're right. And the RIPE Chair is also not officially representing the community, or I'm not speaking for the community. It's really more listening and guiding, and stewardship and facilitation, guiding the community along. Yeah, I mean, I probably be because I just started, but I will probably also speak like at other conferences, maybe reach out to governments, make sure the RIPE community is heard and is seen as a relevant factor in this internet governance arena.
Yeah. I want to come back a little bit to the work that RIPE NCC and RIPE are involved in, and I assume that when discussing about the governance of internet, you talk a lot also with governments or I don't know, non-governmental organizations such as Interpol or others. How is that experience, and what is their role, and how do you facilitate the discussion?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Because as I said, the RIPE community exists since '89, and it's always been open and not even a legal entity, and everybody can participate. The mailing lists are open, and archives are accessible, and don't have to register, don't have to become a member. So the early years, we always said, well, everybody can participate. Governments can participate too. Government representatives are always welcome. They can come to the meetings and can participate in the discussions. But at some point, I think the RIPE community realized that it's not that easy. Governments kind of work in a different way, and they kind of didn't feel comfortable to mingle with the technical community and all these passionate people, and they feel maybe a little left out. So we try to facilitate that a bit more and kind of create a safe space for the governments. For instance, in the RIPE community, we set up a working group that's called the Cooperation Working Group, and that's specifically meant to bring the technical community together with government representatives, also law enforcement, as you mentioned, and to kind of learn from each other and find out what the issues are, and talk a bit more about topics that are relevant for government representatives. In that way, I think we really managed to include government representatives in the RIPE community. On the other hand, the RIPE NCC is also doing a lot to reach out to governments. I mean, the RIPE NCC operates in 76 different countries. So they have members. As I said, it's a membership association, so you become a member and then you get services, for instance, these IP addresses. And so they have members in 76 countries, and it has Europe in the name, but it's a lot more than that. It's the Middle East, Central Asia, Russia and that area. So, and it's a very diverse region, and with so many different types of governments and development stages and so forth. So that's a challenge sometimes. But they're also organizing these government roundtable meetings where they're basically, again, it's like the safe space where government representatives can come together and discuss issues they have or find out. I think for government, it's really important to be convinced that everything is just running smoothly, and that if there's a problem, they know where to go, where they can go to. And I think that's what we've been trying over the years to, again, build these relationships and build make sure they understand how things work on the internet.
Yeah. And I suppose you have worked, well, you have probably traveled to a lot of these countries, right? And met a lot of government officials, but I suppose you have also met and worked with not so friendly governments when it comes to the internet, countries where internet is not really that free or really available as we know it for all people. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Maybe what was one of the interesting discussions or most challenging discussions that you had with the government?
Well, I mean, the RIPE NCC is in itself is a neutral organization, and what the RIPE NCC also does really well is it provides data and it collects data. And so there were cases, of course, where governments, where there were shutdowns or censorships or things, that you would read in the media or whatever. And then what the RIPE NCC could do is basically look at the data, look at measurement data, at connectivity data and traffic, and see what's going on. And then they can make the data available for everybody to see. And that's one role I think the RIPE NCC is very because of this neutral reputation, and its high quality reputation. It's in a very good position to do. And that often helps, to also give people the correct data and the facts so that they can take action themselves. And I don't have an example of where I had a difficult discussion with the government right now, but I know what currently the RIPE NCC is also struggling with are sanctions, and a lot of geopolitical discussions that are happening where sanctions are becoming a lot more a means to, for politics basically, and to for governments to work with each other or not work with each other. And the RIPE NCC is also affected by that at the moment, that sometimes they cannot provide services to their members in certain countries. And that's a real shame, because sometimes it might create humanitarian problems where people cannot access the internet anymore if the RIPE NCC cannot hand out these IP addresses. And so they're currently, that's at the moment a big topic that the RIPE NCC is dealing with.
But I assume that, because you mentioned RIPE NCC is collecting data and making it available. I assume that at some point, showing that data from maybe a country where the internet is not so free or it's sanctioned can tell a story, right? That people can then use it, and then sometimes probably governments are also not too happy about that data, but on the other hand, they know what to expect from RIPE, right? This is the role that you have had since forever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's because it's such a neutral and also well-respected organization. It's it basically can afford, to come out with this data, and people understand and know that the RIPE NCC won't mingle, kind of modify the data or spin it in a certain direction. It's just a fact, and they, so far, I think this has been very useful service.
Yeah, definitely. We have another question coming from the audience. Can you give us an example of topics that are being discussed in the RIPE community? Will give us a better feeling of what is going on there.
Yeah, so as I said, there are 12 different working groups at the moment. So one I already mentioned is the cooperation working group, where for topics are discussed that are more maybe in the government sphere. Like, for instance, there was some discussion about some new e-government initiatives. At the last RIPE meeting, there was also a discussion about how kind of the balance between regulation versus stimulation. How much should we encourage governments to regulate a certain technology, for instance, or a certain standard, or is it not better for the communities to stimulate the usage? Somebody was saying the other day, you cannot force people to eat spinach. You have to make it more tasty. so people will actually want to eat it, people want to use a certain technology, and if something is good, users will use it, and then that's kind of, will further develop. On the other hand, sometimes regulation may be useful, if something should really go in a certain way. So that's one topic, one interesting topic at the moment. Other working groups are a bit more technical. There is a working group that deals with all the connections between the networks, like all the routing between the networks and the different identifiers and technologies that are needed there. And there's a lot of best current practices that people talk about, like how can we best, again, make that internet like stable and functioning, and how can we all as different network operators use certain practices and certain technologies to make that work.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also policies made. I mean, address policies. I mean, that's also important. For instance, these IP addresses. How are they handed out? How many addresses? Who gets what? And what kind of documentation they'll have to provide? What's fair? There's actually an interesting topic also now over the time. How, as I said, all these competitors in a way came up with policies that benefit them all in a way, and not only themselves, but also future market entries, because they realize that if they just grab everything for themselves, it kind of, there is no further development and no further market growth. And so, and these policies are always discussed as a group, as a community, and then they try to come out with the best possible policy that helps them all.
Yeah, because now if you mention it, then I also start to think, okay, are these IP addresses unlimited? Like, can you give away as many as you want, or do you try to restrict the numbers? And what's the rationale? How do you know how many to give out?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting issue, because there was a version of IP addresses. It's called the IP version 4. Which has a certain limited number of addresses. And we basically ran out of these addresses. They've been given out pretty much already a few years ago. And then new technologies were developed to still make them last a little longer, and we can use multiple addresses and so forth. But there's a new version, IP version 6, which has a lot more addresses. And so we don't have to be so strict anymore, and people have a lot more flexibility to use them. But it also comes with additional, like a learning curve, new training, new equipment. Sometimes you have to have new devices. So people were a little hesitant to use that. So the development to the transition to this new technology has been a lot slower than everybody would have wished. But yeah, and so therefore in the past, and you're right, we had to be very careful in how many addresses we could still give out. And the last bit of addresses, the last scrape, from the barrel, we had to, only very small pieces could have been given out to the.
But if I understand correctly, then it's about the limitations of the technology, right? That you can give out a certain number. And it's really about finding what's the best new technology that allows for more IP addresses. So that means more access to internet, actually, right?
Yeah, I mean, this new version that I mentioned, that's a lot. As I said, we can be a lot more flexible there, so you don't have to really be so strict and look at documentation and networking plans and everything. But yeah, so so if people now start with a new business or a new network, I mean, that's the way they should go. They should use that new version of IP addresses.
Yeah. It's good to hear there is a new technology that allows for this, and yeah, it takes time to adopt it, probably, like all new technologies. Yeah. But good to know that we have I don't want to say endless possibilities, but multiple possibilities for access to internet to grow, actually. Mm-hmm. Maybe going into a bit of more about yourself and about you a bit personally. We get a question about mentors, right? Because you mentioned earlier that you try to mentor and you try to encourage young people or women to join the network or to become more active. Can you tell us more? Who do you mentor? What topics do you mentor on? And what do you do normally around this topic?
Yeah, no. So at the RIPE community and for the RIPE meetings, we have mentorship programs for the meetings, basically. So if newcomers, new participants, they can ask for a mentor, and then more experienced participants, RIPE, members can say, I, become a mentor, and then they're kind of matched. The RIPE NCC staff kind of matches a mentor. So last time at the last RIPE meeting, I had a young lady from Croatia who I contacted before the meeting, and we had a good conversation and found out a bit more about what she's interested in, and kind of gave her some ideas and what might be interesting and relevant for her during the RIPE meeting. And so we'll see. I would like to maybe also work a bit more on more long-term mentorship, not only per meeting, but see if we can mentor newcomers a bit more longer, even also in between those meetings. I've also been involved quite a bit in the mentorship program and the newcomers programs for the IETF. That's yet another organization that builds all these standards, all these technologies I just talked about. They're actually created by another organization, and they have a very, quite a good large mentorship program in place. To make newcomers more welcome, because that's even more specific and more technical, and people are more passionate even there than in the RIPE community. So it's important for newcomers to feel welcome.
Yeah, yeah. And you probably have had mentors yourself, maybe not so much around, well, maybe also in your career, but also maybe personal. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about who is a mentor that you really, think of?
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really had an official mentor, and I was quite early on in my career. I was pretty much thrown into it, by, I don't know, just my my colleague or boss at the time. He just kind of took me along to all these conferences, and there I was, talking to all these internet gurus, and I was quite in awe at the time. So, but then slowly, bit by bit, I made more contacts, and I kind of, made friends also. And I think there are some individuals that kind of guided me and, supported me throughout my entire career. And maybe I only noticed that looking back. I didn't really notice that when I was in that situation, but now I'm thinking of them. I go, yeah, they really helped me to, not so much giving me advice what I should do, but more like encouraging me to being myself and to be authentic and credible and just to go my way and support me that way. I think that that was very helpful. Until today, I think I have these people. And it also turned out throughout these years that a lot of these colleagues and community members, they really became friends and mentors in a way. Yes, yeah.
Indeed, a lot of times we realize that somebody was a mentor in our life or in our career after they have successfully took us through some important moments, and then you are indeed grateful. One more question that might help to give some tips and tricks to our audience. Not everybody finds it easy to network. You are very good at networking, right? And community building. Can you share a bit on how you do that? How are you comfortable in networking? Because a lot of times that's the problem. People don't find it natural, doesn't come natural to them to network. I think to you it comes quite naturally from what you have said, but what would be some tips on doing that better or doing that more?
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, what I just said, I think this about recognizing your own skills and your own values and your own expertise, and just kind of believe in yourself and be authentic. I had this one management course once. I remember this ages ago, and this amazing woman, and she was this teacher there, and she had this skill to look right into the core of every participant in this course. It was quite freaky, and she was so good, and she really made us all kind of see what we are, what we're good at, and what our skills are, and to believe in ourselves, and to be authentic, and not only learn these management tricks and tips, and kind of build this wall of management I don't know, books around you. And that really stuck with me, to just try to be, to be confident in your own skills and in your own qualities. I don't know. It's hard to say. Now, how do you network? I think it does help also to have somebody on your side to introduce you to people and to it's always difficult to get to enter a group of people and try and start a conversation if you don't know anybody, and that's hard. And also I find that hard myself, so it always helps to have kind of an anchor, a topic or a person that you already know, or a question you want to ask maybe. But I have seen also in this RIPE community, or in this technical community, people are very open generally if newcomers come and ask questions. And I always felt kind of welcomed and appreciated, and people taught me so much throughout these years. And I never felt like rejected or like brushed aside, or but yeah, you have to take that first hurdle to actually go and ask a question or say something.
Yeah, so it is a little bit about confidence, right? And like you said, finding your qualities, your strengths, and trusting in yourself. I think that's the most important thing that comes in time, right? I mean, it doesn't come for youngsters, as we talked about. It builds up. Huh? And talking about this, I know that, or in general, people always have some ups and lows throughout their career. You have maybe had some of those moments as well, the lower moments when you had to, rethink things for yourselves. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I think why I'm asking is because, well, a lot of us struggle with that, and a lot of times we lose our confidence and we think that, okay, it's just happening to me, I need to do this or that better, why is the other person doing it better than me? And when people talk about their lower moments, they build they make it more approachable, they build more trust, that there are ups and downs, and you can come out of it.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, no, that's actually you're right. It's always it's part of someone's life, and it's also part of my life to have like these ups and downs. So when I started at my first job, I came out of university, in Berlin. I had my master's in computer science, and I started this job, and early on in the 90s, and the internet was just about to take off, and this whole internet boom, started, and the internet grew, the organization grew, and I grew with it quite quickly. And I had quite a steep career at the time, and kind of started as this administrative, fresh from university, staff member. And then within a few years, I was like managing half the company. The organization was growing like crazy. The memberships was growing. I had to step in for the managing director because he was falling over. He had a burnout actually. And I was traveling a lot. I was the main face of the company, and I was managing half the company. And this was just too much at some point. And I had quite a serious burnout at the time. I was like 33 years, and I thought, this is it. I've achieved everything in life. What possibly could still come, So I really had this like very early midlife crisis, if you will, So, and then I really had to take a step back and be like, okay, slow down. What do I actually really want in life? And do I really have to be in the spotlight and in the forefront and do everything, I just kind of decided to slow down a bit and also look at what life really means, or what's important in life, rather than just running for the next achievement or the next goal to reach. And but yeah, it's also that comes with time. I mean, now, for instance, I'm a lot more balanced and a lot more happy in life than I was like 20 years ago, where I still felt I had to make this a big career. And now I'm the RIPE Chair. It's almost kind of happened naturally, because I'm a lot more in my place and a lot more grounded, and I see also the little things in life. Back then I always thought I have to achieve something. There has to be more in life. There has to be more in life. And now I'm a lot more laid back and relaxed. And it's easier said than done, to take a step back and reflect. But maybe that's my advice, sometimes to just think about what's important for you. and instead of just running to please others or to please, what you think should be achieved.
Yeah. So it's more about the why are you doing what you're doing, than what is it, right? That you need to achieve. I think it's more about the, like you said, the little things in life, what really matters to you, and then find your way back up, which I think, as you said, it went successfully for you, because once you were out of the burnout, you came back into the RIPE community, and now you are the chair.
Yeah, that's funny. Maybe, sorry to just interrupt, but when I took that break, I thought, okay, I don't want to have anything to do with these people anymore. They burn me out. I just want to do something completely different, and I wanted to open like a motorcycle repair store, because that's my other passion, motorcycles. But but after a year or so, I felt like, what, this community, this is what I know, this is what I learned, this is what I can do, and then I felt confident again to go back, and I didn't do my motorcycle garage, but I was happy in a way to get back into back to the internet community, because I was really missing them also. They're fantastic people to work with. I really like working with the technical community.
Yeah, that's good to hear. That you just needed to probably refresh your roots, what really connects with you and what really moves you. So yeah, interesting to hear about the motorcycles. I'm curious how you do combine both passions, the internet and this community, and the motorcycles.
What do you mean combined? Well, I mean, I at the moment, of course, I'm not going anywhere, but usually I take quite long summer holidays on a motorcycle. I'm just kind of roam around and go camping and drive. Last year we were in Norway. It was fantastic, beautiful landscape, so nice. And I usually don't plan anything. So that was always maybe that's another tip, also my kind of counterbalance to my work life, where I was sitting in planes a lot and going to meetings and everything had to be planned. And on my motorcycle vacations, I just go. And it's where I don't know where I will be in the evening. It's just everything goes, so it was so relaxing. But yeah, I can't wait. Hopefully next summer.
This is the balance and the combination, right? The freedom that the motorcycle offers you versus maybe the requirements and the planned work life that you have. Yeah. Another question that comes in the chat: if you can describe your leadership style, how would you describe it?
God, it sounds like coming straight out of a management class.
Yeah.
My leadership style, well, maybe it's more like that I listen to people and I try to mediate more and moderate more, rather than being like somebody who, I don't know, steps in with a decision. I think I'd like other people to come to a conclusion, and I guide more. And that's also maybe my personality. I'm not usually very, and I always thought it was a flaw, I'm not very quick in like making a decision or having an opinion on things. I like to think about things a bit more before I come out with a hopefully well thought through conclusion. And that helps me also in my leadership, I think, to first listen to everybody and then kind of try to find a common understanding and guide the group, to a conclusion.
Yeah. Well, you do have a positive comment coming in the chat also from the audience. You do set a fantastic example. That's definitely an opinion that has some background to it. I'm sure of it, more than just hearing you out today. Yeah, I'm also sure you're setting a fantastic example, but I guess like anybody else, there are maybe also some mistakes that you have done in your career. Can you think of one? Can you give an example of a mistake and maybe a failure, and how did it set you up for success afterwards? Because that sometimes happens.
Yeah, I already explained this, like one crisis I had in life, and so obviously there are crises in life, and I think I managed to learn and come out, you know, I mean, it sounds a bit cliche, but kind of come out stronger in the end, and just kind of book it as experiences and try to learn from it, rather than yeah, kind of, I don't know, be getting frustrated about it. And maybe one thing I really had to learn the hard way, and I'm still learning, is to say no sometimes. And maybe that's also a women thing. I don't know, that I, you know, do you like to, I'm always just kind of saying, sure, I can do it. Yes, of course. You know, I would like to help. And I really enjoy this, but I have to sometimes force myself to make a decision, take priorities, and, you know, say no to certain things because I can't do everything. And maybe I learned that from mistakes as well, you know, that to take on too much, and then I can't do everything right. So I'd rather take on a little bit less and try to get everything, you know, well done.
Yeah, that's a great tip that is indeed not always very easy to put into practice. And it can be maybe indeed a bit more difficult for women. But for example, if you had to give an advice to a young woman starting her career right now in tech or otherwise, what would be the one advice that you would give her?
Come to the RIPE community. Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, I think the RIPE community has a lot potential for a lot of different types of people, even if you're not so technical. As I said, the cooperation, you know, working with the governments, there are certain various levels, and there are people with a lot of skills and a lot of expertise that you can learn a lot from. And and it's all for free, and you know, come to a meeting, or, you know, subscribe to one of the mailing lists, and just kind of listen in for a while, and then maybe become a bit more active after a while. And I'm happy to help and coach, and give some tips and where best to start.
Yeah. Good. And maybe talking about young women or starters, it's a question that I always think is interesting to hear from people who have already achieved something great in their career. I'm curious, what did you want to be when you were a child?
Oh
What
my
did you want to
God.
become?
I don't know. Initially I wanted to study psychology, actually. And I wanted to do something with children. I wanted to work with difficult children. Now, see, I now work with the technical community. Maybe it's the same thing. No, yeah, that was my, well, not childhood dream, but at some point I wanted to go, I don't know, open an orphanage or something. And I was always fascinated with like individuals who are somehow different and difficult, maybe to a certain extent. But then I studied computer science, and the whole psychology kind of went out the window.
Yeah, but I'm sure you do use a lot of psychology in your networking, in bringing people together and getting them to work together and agree on certain things. I mean, those skills are definitely there.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. You need to understand like how humans take it to a certain extent. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and probably also the different or slightly difficult people that I don't know if they're more or less in the technical community, but I'm sure that some of these skills you are using right now as well in your work. We are slowly coming to the end of the session, and I really think that it was very, very interesting for us to hear from a woman in such an interesting role, who is working in this organization that the large public don't know so much of. So I think that we're really grateful to find out more about how the internet works and what is happening. As I said in the beginning, it feels like behind the scenes. It's probably very much out in the open, but not so much for the general audience. And what I really get from from our talk today, I think, is this invitation for younger people and women to reach out for techies who want to find their way. The RIPE community is really a place to go and get engaged in case they are interested to participate. So really thank you for that. Maybe you want to also tell us a few words to end the session, something that you would like to leave for our community, for our audience.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you asked all the, right and difficult questions that you could possibly ask. No, thank you very much for organizing this and for having me in this session. I hope it was useful, and I hope people will get something out of it. And and as I said, I'm happy for you or others if they want to contact me on LinkedIn or Twitter, or you have my contact details, and please welcome.
Yeah, thank you. That's a real community builder, open to connect. Thank you again, Mirjam. It was really inspiring and really interesting for us. Thank you to everybody who has viewed our session. And also, of course, we will have this video posted afterwards on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on our YouTube channel. So anybody who would like to view it again or who wasn't able to do so now will be able to see it there. And the same for you, Mirjam. If you would like to share it to even more communities, then it is available. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, and we will be in touch, I'm sure.
Thank you. Yes, sure. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.